Namaskar, Mitro. Very good afternoon, friend. This is Shekhar Mishra once again with you from कानपुर. ये जो वीडियो मैं आपके साथ जो शेयर कर रहा हूँ, इसको थोड़ा सा मैं ब्रीफली बताना चाहूँगा. इसमें इज़राइल के जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैं मिस्टर नेतन्याहू, उनकी प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस आज लगभग 3 बजे के आसपास इंडियन टाइम के हिसाब से उन्होंने प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करी, जिसमें जो भारतीय महिला जो केरल से थी, जिनकी मृत्यु हो गई एक हमास के रॉकेट के स्ट्राइक में, उस मृत्यु के लिए उन्होंने शोक दर्शाया. उसके बाद उन्होंने इस प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस के माध्यम से जो कुछ बताने की कोशिश करी, उसका संक्षेप में मैं आपसे बोलूं तो उनका कहना ऐसा था कि जो एक विश्व का मीडिया का एक वर्ग है, जिसका एक प्रोपेगेंडा चलता रहता है कि ये लड़ाई इज़राइल की मुसलमानों के ख़िलाफ़ है, तो वो इस प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस के माध्यम से यही क्लियर करते हुए दिख रहे थे कि एक्चुअली ये लड़ाई इज़राइल और फ़िलिस्तीन के ख़िलाफ़ नहीं है, ये इज़राइल और जो एक आतंकवादी संगठन है हमास, उसके ख़िलाफ़ है. और उसके वो ऑपरेट कैसे करता है गाज़ा शहर के अंदर, उसके बारे में वो एक वीडियो प्रेजेंटेशन के माध्यम से दुनिया भर के जो राजदूत इज़राइल में हैं उनको बुला के उन्होंने लोगों को चीज़ें क्लियर करने की कोशिश करी. चलिए ये वीडियो देखते हैं और कुछ इज़राइल और जो फ़िलिस्तीन, जो अरब वर्ल्ड के अंदर जो काफ़ी कुछ चल रहा है, 200 लोगों की मृत्यु हो गई है, उसको समझने की कोशिश करते हैं. चलिए, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका.
A very difficult moment for us. We appreciate that, and we appreciate the expressions of support that came from all of you. I also want to use this opportunity to ask the ambassadors of Thailand and India to send my personal condolences to the families of their citizens who were killed, murdered by Hamas rockets. 2 agricultural workers from Thailand, 1 Indian caregiver. And I think this is a radical Islamic terrorist organization that has a piece of territory right next to us. Some of you, many of you, are familiar with fighting such groups and formations and organizations elsewhere in the Middle East, and you know that once they have a territory, you need an enormous amount of power to degrade their capabilities and to degrade their will to fight. And some of this goes on for decades, as you well know, in other areas. So what we're trying to do is exactly that: degrade their capabilities, their terror capabilities, and degrade their will. Last time we had an engagement was 7 years ago, an engagement of this scale, during the Protective Edge operation. We won 7 years of quiet on this scale. We didn't have anything like this. We did have an incident 2 years earlier. It lasted for 2 years, the quiet. So there were periodic battles, and we are trying to maximize the quiet and the period of calm that Israel can gain against this foe. There are only 2 ways that you can deal with them. You can either conquer them, and that's always an open possibility, or you can deter them. And we are engaged right now in forceful deterrence, but I have to say we don't rule out anything. We hope we can restore quiet. We hope we can restore it quickly. I want to say that we're doing that while doing our utmost to avoid civilian casualties. I want to make that a little more concrete for you. Can you show some of this? Yeah, go ahead. Well, the first thing is you probably see as something you're familiar with, rockets on Tel Aviv. Can you show that? Hello? Where's Israeli technology at its worst? Come on, do something. No? 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 Okay. Can you show some of these slides? No? Let me, יש לך את השקפים בבקשה? אוקיי. תראה בבקשה שקף. These are these rockets that are fired from civilian areas. You can see this. This is a typical civilian area. It's a neighborhood in Gaza. And look at the rockets being fired. Thousands of rockets fired from civilian areas. Next. This is the tunneling system that they have. You know that they had attack tunnels last time, 7 years ago, they had attack tunnels that were penetrating Israel, and we went to very costly efforts to neutralize them. We lost 70 people, 70 soldiers roughly, in doing that. This time, they couldn't do it because in the intervening period, we built an underground wall that prevented these tunnels from piercing, but they built a whole infrastructure throughout Gaza of an underground tunnel network in order to enable them to stock their weapons, their missiles, their command posts, their communication centers, and their fighters, and also to shoot from underground, just from small piers that they have. So all of Gaza has basically become an underground city. Under the Gaza city, you have Khan Yunis, all these places, they have these tunnels. And look what happens when we attack the tunnels. We attack the tunnels somewhere here, and they obviously don't have building inspectors there, okay? So they don't build the tunnels in such a way as that they'll be truly reinforced. And this is the result of our own, of our actions in their streets. You see where these tunnels are. They're all firmly in civilian areas. Next. We try to keep humanitarian aid to allow it to go through. We do everything we can there. But I have to say, too, that we've gone through special efforts. Do you have these videos? I want to show you a live video of how our pilots stop an attack because they don't want to have unnecessary civilian deaths, in this case, children. They see that. You don't have it? No? Okay, keep trying. All right. The main point that I want to make is that we go to unprecedented lengths to prevent civilian casualties. When you see those buildings that fall, there's not a single civilian death there. There's not a single death. Yeah. Okay. There are probably children there, so we're not going to do it. We think there are children there. We won't continue because the possibility there are children there. That's a live shot. Then can you show the targeting of buildings, please? We identify an arms cache or a missile cache. It's targeted. Now look at what happens. We hit that, and then you see that explosion in a building nearby. That's not our attack. That is explosives that go off because they're storing their ammunitions in houses, in civilian residents. Next. This is a warning shot. Doesn't do any damage, but it tells the people inside that we're targeting a building, which is a Hamas building, a military target, and people will leave. You'll soon see them leave. You see them leaving. People are leaving. Next.
Sometimes including terrorists.
The terrorists themselves, yeah, they leave. Not sometimes. The foreign minister is absolutely right. Well, that you're familiar with, I'm sure. I'm sure all of you have experienced that as well. Yeshod? This is one of those failed rockets. We have close to 1,000 of them. They fire in Gaza. It fails and falls inside Gaza and claims casualties there as well. I want to say a generic word about our efforts. Because Hamas is embedded deeply in civilian areas, because it uses civilian human shields, democracies have a choice. They can say there is nothing we can do. We will absorb attacks, okay, against our cities. We could do that. or we could level the cities. In World War II, when Western cities, specifically London and some British cities, were targeted this way by thousands of rockets, the response was to level cities. I admire Winston Churchill. I think he was one of the greatest leaders in modern history. I don't criticize him for anything. I think he did the right thing under those circumstances. But this is not our response to the firing of thousands of rockets on our cities. We do something different. We try to target those who target us with great precision. That is not as surgical an operation as it is. Even in a surgical room in a hospital, you don't have the ability to prevent collateral damage around affected tissues. Even then you can't. And certainly in a military operation you cannot. But there is no army in the world that does more than the Israeli army, in the Israeli security services, in Israeli intelligence, to prevent collateral damage. To have Israel criticized for that is absurd. Not only is it absurd and unjust and untrue, it does enormous damage to democracies that are fighting this kind of evil. It says you cannot protect yourself, because in the course of doing that, instead of having the perpetrators who commit double war crimes, or hiding behind civilians and firing on civilians, not having them criticized, but having you criticize, is the height of hypocrisy and stupidity and irresponsibility. Because what that does is, in fact, encourage the terrorists. It gives succor, it gives support, it gives encouragement to the terrorists. And that is something that is bad for each one of us. If Hamas emerges from this, they'll anyway declare victory. I guarantee that. Whatever they do, they'll declare victory. They always do. But after time, you can see if they have a victory or defeat. So I'm not talking about the next 24 hours after the hostilities cease. Okay? I'm not talking about that. But if the perception is that they gained a victory, that is a defeat for all of us. When I say all of us, it's for all the democracies, it's for all those governments that seek peace, it's for all those in the Middle East, among the Palestinians and in the Arab countries, and those Arab countries with whom we made peace, who want to advance to a better future. It means we go backwards. It doesn't help the Palestinian Authority. It doesn't help our Arab friends in the Arab world. So I think that it's very important, and this is, frankly, an open message, and I'm not shy about saying it openly. I think you should support Israel strongly, because this is not merely a question of Israel's security. It's a question of our common security and our common interests in the Middle East. And I want to